right, welcome to Peace of Mind Radio. I am Brian Ramsey along with Chris Vaughn and Eric Douglas. And today is sort of a refreshed version of Peace of Mind Radio podcast, right? And I say refreshed, it's still the same topic, still same three folks here. But really what has been a refresh is the location. You guys can see now we don't have the crazy TV and the little golf thing in the background. It is a different location. We've moved our office. That's why we've been a little bit delayed in getting new content material out. Moving's been an interesting process. Would you guys not agree?
It's still a process, right? A little bit.
Is it done? Will it ever be done? That's what it seems like sometimes.
Yeah, we're still not fully moved in, right? I would say. I mean, we're here, we're working, but we've not fully moved in.
We've still got some more things to do.
I'll say the decorating is not 100% complete quite yet.
Yeah.
But.
Well, that's fair. That's very fair. All right, but yeah, so while the podcast locations change a little bit, the content's still going to be exactly the same. So we're going to talk a little bit about a topic that we've been getting a ton of conversation around. So we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But real quick, our location, just so that you know, we're at the everybody I think in Louisville pretty much knows when we say Flash Cube Building, everybody kind of knows what we're talking about, right?
For the most part, that's been my experience.
If they're over 40. If they're under 40, they don't know what a flash cube is.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Oh, I've been using PF Chang's as the other
there it is.
reference.
That one works
true.
when I'm telling people.
Yeah, so if you guys are familiar, we're at the corner of Hurstmore Lane and Shelbyville Road. We're sort of right behind the Flash Cube Building, which is 9300 Shelbyville Road, and PF Chang. So we're kind of right behind there. And the crazy thing is, this building actually has a Shelbyville Road address, but it's not technically on Shelbyville Road.
You have to turn off of Shelbyville Road to get to it.
Yeah, it's a little bit wonky. But anyway, that's our new move. Like I said, with the office is coming in shape. But our podcast area this is where we are. I mean, this is our podcast area. We're going to be able to use this whiteboard some, which we've got some things coming up that are going to be kind of cool to be able to see that. And then, Chris, you want to talk about how we're going to start rolling this out? Because we're not going to do it like we used to, right? We used to do one every week, and it would come out every Wednesday. And we're going to change that up a little bit. So you might want to touch base on what we're doing.
Well, the plan is that we're going to roll this out twice a month. So every other week, you'll get a new podcast that'll come out from us that will be the Peace of Mind Radio. But then we will also on the interim weeks we'll be doing a series called Connecting the Commonwealth, and I tell you what, I'll let Eric talk about that when that one comes out.
Yeah, well, so Connecting the Commonwealth is going to be really cool. So we've already done a few test episodes with some friends and colleagues of ours, but we will basically be introducing you to a series of small business owners in and around the Louisville metro area. And it's going to be a great way to showcase their business, really their challenges, what they're focusing on. I'm sure there's been a ton of challenges for a lot of small business owners here in the Louisville area here over the last year for obvious reasons, of course. But it's going to be a great way for us to showcase some of our partners, give them an opportunity to get their name and their branding out there a little bit more. So we're really, really excited about the opportunity to partner with some folks here locally.
Yeah, what I would say is if you like our content, just make sure, and Eric does a much better job than this than I do, but just make sure you subscribe. So when you see when you watch one of our podcasts, on this lower left-hand side, you'll see a subscribe button. When you do that, just know that every time we put new content out, you'll get notification. You'll be able to watch it. Same thing with Connecting to the Commonwealth. Now, I will tell you, that is a totally different podcast. So if you subscribe to Peace of Mind, you'll need to go subscribe to Connecting to the Commonwealth.
Right. Two
totally different podcasts. And we have to do that for a lot of reasons. But anyway, and we did want to keep them separate nonetheless. So anyway, just make sure you subscribe. And also, just make sure you tell people about it. We're going to keep this kind of fun and lighthearted. Peace of Mind Radio has been around for a long time, 14, 15 years now. Yeah. And it's gone from, kind of a silly radio show. Then we tried to take a more serious radio show, and then we take it to podcast version. And we were a little bit more serious. Now we want to keep it a little bit more fun. Yeah. That seems to be kind of the common thing. We're still going to talk financial issues, topics, that kind of stuff. But we're going to keep it more in a lighthearted way. So hopefully you find it interesting. And if you do, make sure you share it. We would greatly appreciate that. All right.
Yep.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, interestingly enough, you were talking about keeping this show lighthearted, and then we
Right.
immediately said we're going to talk politics today.
Yeah.
So,
Is there religion next week?
yeah, absolutely.
We're doing
we'll
that
do
next
religion
week.
next
That's
week,
right.
and then family problems and all that fun stuff. No, what we wanted to talk about, because we've had so many calls, we've talked to so many people over the last few weeks about how elections impact the markets and impact your finances.
But don't you think that all kind of started? I mean, wouldn't you guys agree that conversation of how the election and the outcome of the election was going to affect markets? Don't you feel like we've been talking about it for about 6 months now?
Oh my gosh, it seems like we never stopped talking about it.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting process. But go ahead.
No, that was the big one. Is and I've been on these phone calls. I've talked to people in workshops that I've done last year as we were going through the election cycle, and everybody's always concerned. Well, if so and so is elected, what's that going to do to my 401k? Well, if this party takes control of that house, how is that going to affect my investments? And you know what I find interesting is, after each election cycle, you've always got a little bump of some kind in the markets. But when it comes down to it, everything always ends up coming back around as if there had been no changes in the first place. That's my experience.
Yeah.
It's been interesting because you've been saying we've been having this conversation with clients really for the past 6, maybe even the past 12 months, right? It seems at every opportunity, or clients keep waiting for the other shoe to drop at various points, right? So the first point was the election. Well, what's going to happen after the election? Well, nothing's really bad has happened since the election. No real volatility, no market drop, no doom and gloom, right? And then it's like, well, after the new year, well, the new year's come and gone now. Well, now the new, the next threshold is now the inauguration day. Well, once everything becomes official, well, that cake is kind of already baked. And so we were talking about really how presidential elections, or just elections in general, affect the stock market. It really should be the topic of the conversation we're trying to have with clients right now, is how it does not affect your portfolios at the end of the day, or at least not from a long-term perspective, because trying to take a supercharged emotional subject to a lot of people right now, and basically trying to remove that element of emotion for most people has been really, really difficult these last few months, while everything's so fresh and so raw based upon what's happening throughout the country right now.
Yeah, and I'd say that it's been interesting. I had a conversation with a client last week, and we were on a Zoom call, and I don't know, I'm not endorsing Zoom, but it was technically a Zoom call.
I think that's become the new lexicon, though, is
It
we're
is.
all going to start
Kleenex,
calling.
That's the new
Coca-Cola.
Kleenex.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah,
new
exactly.
Kleenex, the new Coke. Where
Yeah.
It's a Zoom call because you can see the person in your computer.
Yeah. So anyway, I was on a call. I was on a video conference with a client. And this particular client was very worried about sort of what was going to happen over the next couple of weeks, given that we got the election outcome that was in Georgia, that we kind of figured out what that was going to be like. So the conversation we had was, I said, if he's quite a bit older than me, and I said, go back even, to the very first election that you ever got to vote in. And I think mine was Reagan. I was trying to go back and do the math. I think it was Reagan or somebody anyway. And I said, it seems like in every presidential election, there's always one side or the other says after the election, doom and gloom, the world's falling apart.
Yep.
The world's going to come to an end. And lo and behold, it never happens, right? The markets are pretty resilient. And that's really what our point of this is one, to introduce the new studio and all that good stuff, but really just to say, look, if you're worried about what's going to happen over the next 6 to 12 months of this new administration, the answer is the markets will figure out a way to work with whoever's in office. They don't really care. But if you get so caught up and you're watching MSNBC or CNN or Fox News or whatever, and that's all you watch, you're going to get so worked up and so consumed with all that, you're going to think your portfolio is falling apart. But in all reality, the market doesn't care who's in the White House or what administration or whether they have both houses of Congress. They really don't care. All they want to know is, give me the rules I'm going to play under, and I'm going to figure out a way to make it work, or make a way to make it work, which is what they're going to do, right? And so you look across. I remember specifically when Obama was elected.
Yeah.
Right after he was elected, the Republican Party was like, the world's coming to an end. Conservatives like, oh, it's going to be whatever, socialism's coming, and they're going to take away your guns, and nothing happened, right? 8 years later, and by the way, he had both houses of Congress and the president for a while, and nothing, all we got was health care. Well, okay, argue whether it was a good or bad thing, but really, they didn't pass through everything they run on. So you got to kind of keep that in mind when you look at the after effects of an election. Is most of the time what they're running on is just words, right? It's these talking points that every politician talks about. They really don't intend to implement everything that they say, but they have a tendency to scare the other side. But that's the point, right? They want to get votes. So I just say, real quick, I just say that if you're looking at your portfolio right now and you're thinking, the world's coming to an end, call us and we'll talk you off the ledge, and we'll manage through this just like everybody else is going to manage through it.
There's a couple of things that I would add to that, because you're absolutely right. But one of them is too many people look, they're watching the news shows like you talk about, and they're seeing what these indexes are. That's what CNBC and Fox Business and all of these programs report on. They report on the Dow and the NASDAQ and things like that. And you see those things going up and down, and they'll panic, doom, and gloom. That's most likely not what your portfolio is. That's just a measurement of one part of the markets. So if your portfolio is nothing but one of those indexes, you might want to talk to a professional in the first place. But that's one of the parts where I think people get a little bit wrapped up in that. And the second part of it is there is a Nobel laureate named Roger Ibbotson. And if you've ever seen what's called an Ibbotson chart, it shows the history of the markets, those big indexes that I was just mentioning, but it also shows all these different events, from political events to social events, from World War I and World War II all the way up to 9/11, presidential elections, all those things. And if you look really close, if you stand right up next to that chart, you see all those little bumps. Yep. But if you step back from it, you look at it over time, those bumps always have recovered, and they continue to go up.
The other reality, too, here is there's a huge opportunity cost of removing all of your money from the market just because you're afraid of what's going to happen with the presidential election. I know specifically some folks that I've talked to that took their money out back over the summer because they were afraid of what was going to happen in November. They missed out on a huge swing in the market. To their loss because they were not invested. There was a huge opportunity cost, and you want to make sure that you're not costing yourself a huge opportunity to make some money in the market and make some money within your investments, if at all possible, based upon just because you're scared of what else might be going on in the world today.
Yeah, look. So at the end of the day, and by the way, if you watch us enough, we are not political junkies. The only reason why we talk about it is because we get a ton of questions, and that's really what we base our shows on, our conversations that we've had with clients, usually the last couple of weeks. So literally we say, what's our topic going to be? And one of the three of us says, hey, I had a conversation with a client about this. And we're like, that'd be a cool show topic. And so that's how we come up with our show topics. So literally we said, okay, a few minutes before we recorded this one. No, but we were talking about topics. We said, what's the number one thing that we've all had conversations around in the last couple of weeks? Yep. And hands down, we said the outcome of the election. That's why we decided to talk on it. We didn't make a big deal out of it. We don't want to make a big deal out of it because we're not politically motivated here. But it does affect the markets, and it does affect our clients, and it affects the way we manage portfolios. So we have to talk about it, but we're not going to say we're pro one side, pro the other side. Actually, we don't really care. We just care about what the markets are going to do and how the markets are going to react. That's really our what we care about. So with that being said, does anybody have any final thoughts on that piece?
No,
before?
I think we beat that one to death.
Yeah. And just so you know, if you're watching this and you've got a cool show topic and you go, hey, I want to talk to these guys, or I want these guys to talk about a particular show topic, write us, let us know. We're happy to talk about any content you guys want to talk about. I will say that we're going to, like I said, moving forward, we're going to try to do things in a little bit more lighthearted way. As a matter of fact, we've got one coming up here, let's say over the next 4 to 6 weeks, that I promise you're going to want to tune into because we're actually going to interview kids, believe it or not, about financially related topics. So that will be very entertaining because I literally said to my son the other day, my youngest, who's 10, I said, hey, what is asset allocation? And he stared at me. I said, well, you have to answer it, right? You have to give me an answer. I don't care what it is. You have to give me an answer. And his answer was hilarious. So I've told him he has to repeat that back on the show. So anyway,
But
we're going to
He did come up with an answer, though?
Oh, yeah. Had
'Cause I
nothing.
tested that on my 13-year-old, and his answer was, what? I mean, just this completely dumbfounded look.
Mm-hmm.
He had no idea what I'm talking about. It's like, you hear me talking about this all the time at home.
Yeah,
Not a clue.
mine brought up Fortnite. That'll tell you where he went with it. So
If we want to make some real money, maybe we need to do a Fortnite podcast
Do a
with,
Fortnite
with my
podcast.
8-year-old and
Yeah.
maybe your 13-year-old.
yeah,
right?
no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. But hey, listen. So I appreciate you watching today. Just so you know, we're going to actually record another podcast here in a few minutes. So if we all have the same attire on, I promise we don't wear the same thing over and over. We just happen to. We're going to shoot 2 in one day. But anyway, I appreciate you listening. Make sure you tune in to all the rest of the shows. We really want to take a second to introduce our podcast studio. You're going to see, if you've seen Chris over here sort of poking at a laptop, we're testing it out. So if it looks a little wonky and maybe one of us started talking and he didn't quite get the screenshot.
Oh, I'm sure that happened.
Yeah, but we are testing. It's kind of cool. We got three cameras set up. We usually are going to have 4, but we've had somebody that's not here today, so we can't use their phone. And we're going to eventually have somebody over to the side that's coordinating all of our shows. But for now, Chris is doing a great job. He's kind of doing this as amongst
Doing my best.
Yeah, doing while he's talking. But so anyway, cool shows moving forward. Backgrounds are really cool. The way we're going to do it is a little bit unique. So anyway, just make sure you tune in, and Eric, I'll let you sign us off because you know what you're saying. I don't.
Well, make sure you find us on YouTube at the Family Wealth Planning Partners page. When you click that red button, hit that subscribe button to make sure you're the first to hear about new content that we push out. We're going to be pushing out a lot more content this year. So that's one of our New Year's resolutions now that we have new offices, new studios, a lot more new content coming your way. So please make sure you're subscribed. Take a moment to listen, subscribe, rate, and review whenever you get a chance on any podcast platform that you're currently consuming this content on. We really appreciate it, and we certainly look forward to delivering you fresh new content pretty much on a weekly basis going forward here. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
The information given herein is taken from sources at IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP, IFP Securities, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believed to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors. This report may not be reproduced, distributed, or published by any person for any purpose without IFP's express prior written consent. Securities offered through IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP, member of FINRA and SIPC. Investment advice offered through IFP Advisors, doing business as IFP, a registered investment advisor. IFP and Family Wealth Planning Partners are not affiliated. The information given herein is taken from sources at IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as IFP, IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believed to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors.